So good evening, everybody, and thank you very much for joining us. As Barney said, I manage all of Naturetrek's reptile and amphibian holidays, and this evening I'm going to talk about why I set up the reptile tours, and also, of course, give you an overview of the tours and what they entail. So we have 13 group tours at the moment across the continent, and we offer a number of other options via our tailor-made department. So if there's a destination not listed and we've got who have expert leaders in those regions, then they're another thing that we can offer. And I'm always working on new reptile and amphibian tours, particularly for next year, looking to expand our destinations for short haul travel, which are very popular at the moment for the reptile and amphibian tours. And you can find more about our whole portfolio of reptile and amphibian holidays through the Naturetrek's normal website. And here you'll be able to go onto each tile relating to each tour and download the itinerary, which will give you lots of information about the tour, and also previous tour reports, which I know a lot of you like to read, and also reviews of each of the tours from tours that have gone out previously. So why did I want to set up these tours in particular? Well, believe it or not, that little chap in red there, that's me, and I'm there stood next to my late grandfather in the grey coat, who was a brilliant amateur naturalist, and since this age, or even before then, he used to take me out looking for wildlife, in particular bird watching, but also one of my favorite things to do at that age was to go pond dipping. And I loved catching the newts and studying the newts, and also the frogs, toads, and any reptiles we came across as well. So from that very early age, my heart was really set on reptiles and amphibians. As a teenager, it was the rise of the internet, and I had a very misspent youth searching for photos of rare reptiles and amphibians from around the world, and trying to get more information and photos from them. And sometimes I'd come unstuck and there wouldn't be information available for some species that I wanted to learn about. So I actually, as a teenager, set up a website, contacted museums from all around the world to try and get information regarding the species. And as a young teenager, I had a paper round and also worked cleaning cars on the Suzuki forecourt before playing football, so that I could raise money to travel to Australia alone at the age of 17 to look for some of the reptiles that were missing from my database. Well, to cut a long story short, most of my career has been as a herpetologist, and most of that was spent at Durrell Wildlife Conservation Trust on the island of Jersey in the Channel Islands. And this iguana here plays quite an important reason for the setup of these holidays. So most of my work involved the ex situ in situ conservation of reptiles and amphibians. So this here is biosecure units that I'd work in for the rearing of agile frogs, which in the British Isles are only found in Jersey. And in the 1980s, they were very close to extinction there when Durrell intervened, and they bring the spawn into captivity where it was less vulnerable to predation from things like feral ducks, and also from water quality changes. And they would be reared in these units to about this size before being released back into the wild, where their rate of survival at this point was much, much higher. And it did, of course, also involve working overseas on projects. So this is myself at Lake Titicaca in Bolivia at 3,500 meters. And here I was particularly working for the for research of the critically endangered Lake Titicaca frog, which is threatened by numerous things, but particularly the pathogen which causes chytridiomycosis, which is a fungal disease which has devastated amphibian populations worldwide, not too dissimilar to what we're sadly seeing in the UK at the moment with avian influenza. So here I was tasked with collecting specimens alongside brilliant Bolivian colleagues, and also some researchers from the United States. And yes, we'll do the research work, looking for this pathogen and looking at what else was going on in the environment. Using the knowledge that I'd gained through working with species such as the agile frog in Jersey, I helped to set up a facility here. And this was to secure some individuals in case, well, we didn't know what was truly going on in the wild. And you can see the similarities here to that agile frog unit that we worked with so successfully in Jersey. And of course, it was really rewarding work, incredibly rewarding. And I was very lucky to be involved with a number of projects like this across the world. Another such project was with the Anguilla racer. And my task was to head out to Anguilla, which is one of the northern Leeward Islands in the Caribbean, and to actually collect some snakes to take back to Jersey, where they would form a project as a model species for the world's rarest snake, which is still the St. Lucia racer, which numbers just about 20 to 50 individuals in the wild. So again, to cut a long story short, I was successful in my task, and we learned a lot about this species, which will now be used as we speak. They're building the facility to try and prevent the extinction of the St. Lucia racer. So they'll take the information that we learned with this model species and use it in situ to try and save the world's rarest snake. Again, it was really rewarding work, and I've been very lucky to share my passion with my projects with many people, from the royal family to David Attenborough and people like the Superman actor Henry Cavill, who very generously gave up his time to help raise awareness for the projects that we were working on. And you can see him here with one of those racer snakes that I collected in the Caribbean. But yeah, it was here in the Caribbean that on Anguilla that I came across this sign when I was out doing field work, and it really did touch my heart, because this here is the last remaining habitat on the whole island for that iguana that was photographed by me hatching out of the egg. So I was obviously proud of the work that we were doing, but knew that we needed to add some more armory to the conservation of reptiles and amphibians, and that's where I hope these tours come into play. So one of the key things is to increase people on the ground, so that when things do change like this, you've got time to react. And having participants and leaders in the field is really valuable, not just for reptiles and amphibians, I feel, but across the taxa. Another thing I learned doing these projects was that it was very hard as a herpetologist in these countries to raise awareness and funds for their projects, and I want to and still want to support these projects, and I think you'll hear quite a lot about that this evening. I also wanted to give more of a tangible value to reptiles and amphibians, which we've seen be successful with things like the national parks of Africa and destinations like Costa Rica, where they've been very successful in this, also to raise awareness for the species. And of course, one of the most important things is also to provide the opportunity that I had to enjoy these species up close, and the habitats, the amazing habitats that they can be found in. So to the tours in specific here, yeah, typically they're smaller groups we operate than the birding tours, typically 5 to 8 people. There are a few exceptions, such as in Dorset and in the Peloponnese, where the habitats lend themselves to slightly larger groups up to 10 or 12, and that works very well in those places, but typically it is a 5 to 8 people per tour. Probably the most common question I get is whether you need expertise, prior experience to get involved in these tours in terms of reptiles, amphibian knowledge. And the answer is a resounding no. You don't need any experience or expertise to enjoy these tours at all. You just need to be keen to see these species. And yeah, for example, don't join the reptile and amphibian tour if your primary aim is to see a rare bird that may be found in the same species. If you want to learn about these species and from our brilliant leaders, then you have a great time without any experience or expertise required. So the accommodation we use is what you'll be very used to perhaps already from the Naturetrek holidays. So avoiding large commercial hotels. Typically we like to use family run, smaller places with a lot of character, and of course all rooms that we offer on the tour will be en suite. And just to give, I don't have time to go through every tour, of course, but just to give one example, this is from Morocco. So this is a lovely hotel that we use just a couple of hours from Agadir, in the north part of the itinerary. And you can see here is really lovely, well-appointed rooms with lovely views and beautiful infinity pool, which our groups have been lucky to see the Milky Way reflected on some evenings. And this hotel in particular does refer back to one of my points already from an earlier slide, that the first time we used this hotel, the owners, when they asked why we were there, what we were doing, and I said to them that we're here to see the snakes and the lizards and so on. Yeah, their face was, you could probably imagine, but sure enough, it's only taken one tour following that, and the communication I've had with them recently is that they want to actually join us on excursions. So these small things really can make a difference. And of course, we hope that these people will now be a voice for us on the ground for protection of wildlife. In the south of Morocco, in the deep south, there's fewer options, of course, but that's not a problem because we use this absolutely charming place run by Brahim, who you can see in the top left there. And when you see his beaming smile and when on arrival and how happy he is to see us, yeah, it's a real charm, and his hospitality, of course, second to none. The rooms are, of course, not quite as well appointed as the first hotel, but we all love staying there, and you'll get a fantastic traditional Moroccan breakfast with traditional Moroccan hospitality. You can enjoy Moroccan tea, and then you'll get argan oil, olive oil, local honey, and this amlou, which is a runny peanut butter, a sweet one. Really great to try that. And yeah, as I say, such a lovely chap, and lots of the clients have really fond memories of staying here. So a typical day on one of these tours, yeah, so these do represent really great value for money for naturalists. So we do spend a lot of time in great habitats. Some of the species are quite elusive and difficult to find. So some days there will be longer hours in the fields than perhaps a typical mammal or general wildlife tour. We do build in time in the afternoons to rest, but I should point out that yeah, because of the nature of the species, that won't be every single afternoon. And the other parts of the excursion are exactly as excursions are exactly what you would expect from a wildlife tour. You travel to a habitat and spend some time exploring it, and yeah, it's a fantastic value for money tour. That includes as well in the evenings, a lot of the species are nocturnal, so the evenings will be spent searching habitats by foot and head torchlight, which is really stunning thing to do with the stars, and it's just lovely to be out at night. And another good way to find reptiles at night is doing night drives, as some of you will be familiar with from mammal tours. And of course, it goes without saying, as per our other wildlife tours, you'll be joined by really top leaders, and you'll hear from some of them tonight. So to finish, I just wanted to share some highlights from our recently returned tours. So this here is the beautiful Porengis adder, and this photo was actually taken from a safe distance with a mobile phone, so you don't have to have really expensive gear to get great shots on these tours. But if you do have that gear, then you will be in for a treat, because there's absolutely brilliant photo opportunities throughout the tour. It's amazing to stumble upon species, or find with the expert leaders rather, the species like the Macqua chameleon, a desert adapted chameleon, terrestrial. And there will be great chance to see snakes on the tours, and which are otherwise, as you'll know, very hard to find. And yeah, you'll have fantastic photographic opportunities for them. Amphibians too. Simply being out at night will give you a great chance to find amphibians, and this stunning species from the recent Namibia tour was found just outside the lodges, at 2 of the lodges actually. So yeah, just simply being at night you can get your rewards. And we get incredible bycatch on these tours as well, so you don't miss out on your mammals and your birds if that's your primary interest. And this group of free foraging batted foxes was a real delight, and only matched by a mother batted fox out one evening when we were on a night drive with 2-month-old or a couple of month-old cubs foraging on the road. Just stunning to see that. And yeah, great meerkat group that we also bumped into, and plenty of other mammals. And as I say, the nature of these reptiles and amphibians are sensitive to change in their habitat, so you'll really visit some pristine, stunning landscapes on the tours. I wanted to include this because this again refers back to one of my points earlier. So this species here from the Namibia tour we're actually almost certain we'll describe a range extension of nearly 100 kilometers for this species. So that will go towards the scientific knowledge and ecology of the species. And you never know, that can always play a part in the conservation of a species too. And the same for this Pachydactylus gecko, which was found 40 kilometers from its nearest known range. And it was an absolute joy for me to find this species, one that I'd wanted to see since I was a child, the amazing armadillo lizard found on the Western Cape of South Africa, where they live in family groups. And we do really well for these Bitis adders on the tours, and you'll hear a lot more about that in the Kenya tour. Tortoises too, if you're into your tortoises, we have some great species to be found on the tours. This is, if you can spot it, this is the speckled padloper, the smallest tortoise species in the world. And yeah, if you can see it amongst the succulents towards the front there, a really beautiful species. We also get fantastic invertebrate bycatch as well, such as this stone grasshopper I stumbled upon, looking just like a piece of quartz in the habitats there. But yeah, plenty of mantis, stick insects, all sorts of brilliant, by the methods that you're using to try and find the reptiles and amphibians, you get brilliant bycatch of invertebrates too. And beautiful neonate Egyptian cobra from Morocco, very sought after sand viper from the deep south of Morocco. We have a particular excursion to see this rare and amazing species. And again, we have brilliant bycatch in Morocco too, where we have a known place for these shrews, the elephant shrews, sengi. So you've got a great chance to see the species on the tour. And on the Morocco tour, if you wanted to extend, we have an extension to the High Atlas Mountains where you can search these beautiful habitats for a number of lizard species and the mountain viper. This is from our Albania tour. This is a subspecies of nose-horn viper, and this subspecies in particular has this green tail tip which it uses for caudal luring. Amazing species. And Albania has some fantastic habitats where you can find a huge range of amphibians cohabiting, and the keen-eyed amongst you will pick out some orchids and other brilliant flora there too. And Snake Island, where you'll find huge densities of die snake, wall lizards. In the air, you've got alpine swifts circulating, fantastic place, pygmy cormorants as you come in, and a chance for Dalmatian pelican too. You have a great chance for African chameleon on our Peloponnese tour. And supposedly one of the hardest snakes to find in Europe. We do extremely well for it on our Peloponnese tour, and I think across 2 tours last year, we found around 10 individuals of this really beautiful snake species. And another nose-horn viper, I put this in to remind myself to say that for our European tours, we hope to offer a range of tours which would allow you to see a really good percentage of Europe's reptile and amphibian fauna. And again, with our expert leaders, it won't be just fleeting views. They'll set you up to be able to enjoy these animals to their fullest. You'll be able to pick out some stunning details on individual animals, such as this alpine newt, probably the nicest subspecies of this species, found on the Peloponnese tour. Again, beautiful habitats you'll visit. Closer to the home, fantastic smooth snake. Tony will talk more about, I'm sure. Photographed by my colleague Tom from the Reptiles and Amphibians of Britain tour. And finally, in South America, again, fantastic place for amphibians, reptiles, great chance to photograph mammals, fantastic birds. And of course, had to finish on a reptile, so a beautiful rainbow boa there. And just leaves me to say thank you so much to everybody who has joined one of the reptile and amphibian holidays so far. And thank you for everybody who gave permission to use their photographs in this presentation this evening. And of course, thank you all for listening. And it's just 20 minutes to cover all of our reptile amphibian tours, so I'd really welcome any phone calls that you wanted to give this week, tomorrow, regarding any tour in particular, or better still, do pop into the Naturetrek office. If you just contact in advance to say that you'd like to pop in to discuss a tour, we're always very happy to see people. And finally, my email address there. So thank you once again, everybody.